All right, so One Piece chapter 1123 just dropped, and we got some things to talk about. Hello, guys. My name is Sai, and we're going to be breaking down this latest chapter. So that being said, let's get right to it. To kick things off this week, we have a continuation of Yamato's cover page story. Turns out that Denjiro did not end up executing these kids, and instead, their only punishment for throwing rocks at Yamato was to simply eat Odin with Yamato. I'd consider this outcome a big win across the board, right? Not only are they enjoying a big bowl of Odin, but the kids learned a very valuable lesson today. They learned that you shouldn't judge someone based on what their fathers or forefathers have done. You know, like, Yamato isn't Kaido, Ace isn't Roger, Luffy isn't Dragon. It's just that simple. So yeah, I think the kids are going to come out of this in a pretty positive way. They're not going to hate Yamato, and they might even tell their friends to not hate Yamato. So I think this would definitely boost Yamato's PR across Wano. Speaking of across Wano, though, we are 11 volumes in to Yamato's cover page journey, and she's still at the first stop. She left the Flower Capital, she arrived here in Kibi, and we're still here. It's like, yo, we still got like 6 to 7 other named locations that Yamato has to stop at. So I'm so curious to see how Oda is either going to ramp this up or make this enjoyable. Well, it's already enjoyable, but you know what I mean, right? I'm wondering when a big bad or a greater plot point will jump into the cover page story. I got my eye out for that one. One thing that kind of just popped into my mind right now about Yamato and those kids, last thing, I swear, last thing, and then we'll hop onto the chapter, but I wonder if these kids will follow Yamato during her pilgrimage. Because you gotta remember, Odin was traveling around Wano, and that's when he just found the scabbards, and they just wanted to follow him. He told them to go home and leave him alone, but they just kept on following him anyways. So with these kids looking as scrappy as they do, right? Maybe they're homeless, maybe they don't have any parents, maybe they died to Kaido. But either way, if these kids truly have nowhere to go, I could actually see them following Yamato throughout her journey, which I think would be kind of fascinating. You know, she truly would be following in Odin's footsteps, because this is exactly what happened to Odin. You know, he was like, hey guys, you got nowhere to go? Well, here's some food. See you later. Oh, you want to come? I guess so, you know? Oh, back to Egghead Island, and we see something absolutely blasphemous. We see that the Marines have all been knocked out. And the reason I say it is blasphemous is because Dahl and Pomsky, two VAs who last week were standing tall throughout Joyboy's Conqueror's Hockey Blast, they are seen lying down on the ground unconscious at the start of this week's chapter. I can't believe it. This was the one VAW we have had here on Egghead Island. I've gone to bat for these guys every single chapter. I was like, yo, you know, Red King's gonna take down Frankie. It's gonna happen, guys. Tosa's gonna beat those giants. Oh man, I was delusional. I was just waiting for them to get one small ounce of respect. Not because I really care about these guys, but I think they're fun, right? They're a fun group. And last week, I was like, yo, my guys withstood Joyboy's hockey. You know, it happened. It happened. But just as soon as I felt the warm embrace of God and his heavenly light, it was ripped away, brother. Because Pomsky and Dahl are knocked out. Yeah, Oda knows what he's doing. I mean, it's worth it, right? This was definitely worth the hype. I'll give a pass on this one. This is used to scale Joyboy in relation to Shanks, which I thought was kind of crazy too. Right, so we go on, and, you know, I'll talk about S-Snake here in a second, but Dory and Brogy, they're like, hey, that Conqueror's Hockey Blast, it wasn't hostile, right? Well, either way, that was greater than Red Hair Shanks's. Wow. Well, what? What are we saying here? So hopefully you guys know me by this point, but I do read spoilers well before the chapter releases, and leading up to this point, in every spoiler drop I've seen, they've never clearly stated that it was better than Red Hair Shanks. They said, oh, maybe it's greater than Shanks. But the TCB translations lays the sack on the table, and they say that it is just straight up greater than that of Shanks, which isn't shocking, right? I'm saying this as if it's some grand revelation, but it's really not when you think about it, because Joyboy is the penultimate being. He's a character that Oda's had in mind for a very, very, very long time now. He was fighting the best of the best 900 years ago. He almost ruled the world, right? He gave Imu PTSD. He sent the Gorosei all the way back to Marie's Raw. Joyboy is straight up that guy. And that was all done through rope, mind you, right? Like, is this even Joyboy's strongest attack? It wasn't even named, to our knowledge. He just put Conqueror's haki in some rope and said, hey, have it, Emmett. You know, keep this for 900 years and just rip it out. So yeah, to me at least, it just makes sense that Joyboy is numero uno. And that's not like demeaning to Shanks or anyone else in the series, mind you, right? Like, you can't really compare yourself to Joyboy. And the thing with Joyboy as well is that even though Joyboy is at that level, other characters like Luffy, Shanks, and, you know, just anyone else in the verse, they still have a chance to grow and surpass Joyboy eventually. Because Joyboy's dead. The guy's peaked. Whereas Shanks and Luffy and all these other characters, they can always just keep on growing and building up that haki. So I love this power scaling from Oda here. It does kind of just lay it down that Joyboy is that guy. And it kind of ties back to why I wanted to rope this in with the VA talk. Because back in Film Red, not canon, of course, but when Shanks unleashes haki on the Marines, Fujitora and Kizaru made note that Shanks' haki is so crazy that even some VAs fell due to it. Granted, though, in the movie, we actually don't see any Vice Admirals unconscious. The only Vice Admiral we see in that scene is Momonga, and he doesn't pass out. He simply drops to his knees, and that's it. You know, he's still kicking, you know, he's still there. So I kind of like this distinction of Joyboy can knock out Vice Admirals clearly, whereas Shanks, it's kind of like 50-50, right? I think it's really cool that Oda just took the time and drew that line in the sand between, you know, Shanks' haki and Joyboy's haki, and just showing you how you can tell when Shanks or Luffy or anybody else gets to that level, right? Maybe by the end of the series, Luffy will also be knocking out Vice Admirals with his haki. And then at that point, we can say, oh, Luffy's haki is on the same level as Joyboy's now because Momonga's passed out or because, you know, Doll and Pomsky are knocked out, right? I love that we now have a base level to start scaling these characters with. Something pretty cool we actually see off of the VA panels, though, is the fact that the Boa Hancock Seraphim is trying to wake up Pomsky, and she's like, hey, get up, dude. Like, you know, we gotta go chase the Straw Hats. They're escaping. And somebody brought up a really good comment in the last video, and they said, hey, does the Boa Hancock Seraphim want to chase the Straw Hats down because it's her mission and she wants to defeat them? Or is it simply because she wants to go and see Luffy again? So moving forward with the chapter, we cut back to the Straw Hats and the giant pirates, and Luffy is saying his goodbyes and thank yous to Emmett. What's funny, though, is that, you know, Luffy's laughing over here, he's throwing up his arms, and then when you cut over to Emmett, you see that he's, like, on the verge of death, he's powered down, he's blackened out, and it's just funny thinking that, you know, Emmett can't react to this whole scenario. I kind of wish he could have, you know, I wish he could have heard these words before he passed out, but it just be like that sometimes, right? Another thing to keep in mind that is also kind of funny about this whole scene is that Saturn is right in front of Emmett last we saw, so there's a good chance that if Emmett could hear this, so could Saturn. And I'm just imagining that his veins are like popping out of his forehead because he's so angry at the sound of Luffy's voice and the fact that he let them get away. So now that the Marines can no longer follow us, the Straw Hats can finally relax a little bit. We see Bonnie hugging what I think is Kuma. It looks like Kuma, right? It looks like Kuma's abs. They like took off his shirt. I'm not too sure what's going on there. Zoro has a sigh of relief. Usopp is crying because he's just so happy that giants are here. And then we see that Luffy has once again shriveled up into an old man and is now resting on Nami's lap. The best place to recover, mind you. And then we also see Sanji, who walks into Vegapunk's room. So I don't know how I feel about this yet, but Sanji walks up to Vegapunk and he's like, hey, Vegapunk, what you said earlier, it just doesn't sit right with me. And this starts the whole Vegapunk flashback in the chapter. And the reason why I said a second ago that this feels off to me is because I think this is the first time we've ever carried a dead body on the ship. So seeing Vegapunk's dead body here in this chapter just feels a little bit weird. It just makes me feel like he might come back to life at any moment. And that is very plausible because Punk Records is still alive and, quote, breathing in a tube. You know, we still have Lilith, we still have York. So there is always a chance that Vegapunk could be resuscitated or brought back to life if, you know, they put artificial organs within him. And yeah, I mean, I just feel like any minute now he's gonna wake up and just join the party. But I don't know, right? Like, it's so strange to think about. And I would love to pass the question on to you guys. Do you think Vegapunk is 100% dead, or do you think he's like 50-50 dead where he could come back at any time given the right technology? Or no, do you think he is gone for good? Personally, I'm more in the 50-50 camp. I could see him coming back if given the right circumstances. You know, maybe he needs Lilith to perform some operations on him. Maybe he needs some good old Vegapunk tech inside of his body. But yeah, again, I would love to pass that question on to you guys. So now, on to the Vegapunk flashback. This takes place 2 weeks prior to the Straw Hats' arrival here on Egg Island, and Shaka realized that somebody has been tampering with the Mother Flame energy data. And this all started because he realized that the Seraphim aren't receiving their gradual boost of energy, and this leads them down this whole rabbit hole where they come to the conclusion that somebody has indeed stolen a portion of the Mother Flame. To me at least, one thing I found kind of interesting is the fact that the Seraphim are powered by the Mother Flame, or at least that's where they get their energy from. And the reason that's so fascinating is because we know that the Mother Flame that Vegapunk has is imperfect. It isn't fully there yet. It's extinguishable, and it couldn't power up the ancient robot like Vegapunk wanted it to. So, since we know that Luffy is pretty much the perfect Mother Flame, what would it be like if the Seraphim traveled with Luffy? Or what if they had Luffy's flame? I do wonder if they would get like a crazy power boost, and besides the Seraphim, how would the Mother Flame affect Lunarians, like King, for example, right? Would King get a crazy power boost if he was with Luffy? Maybe, right? I mean, we know that he's powered by the flame on his back, so if Luffy, you know, slaps him back there and turns the flame white, or if the Seraphim had white flames, I feel like they would go pretty crazy. And you know, with that being said, it kind of makes you wonder why Oda never had Luffy fight the Seraphim while in Gear 5th. Maybe he did, but we only saw Luffy use Gear 4th on screen. So maybe he's hiding the Gear 5th Lunarian interaction for a future event. So now that Shaka, Pythagoras, and Vegapunk realize that there is indeed a culprit here on Agate Island, and one of them is a Vegapunk, they immediately turn their attention to Lilith. And I can't blame them, right? I mean, we're talking about Lilith. She is the, quote, evil Vegapunk. So it makes sense as to why they would hone in on her specifically. And plus, you know, when the whole mystery first went down, a lot of people were betting that it was Lilith simply because she was evil as well. So in a way, it kind of brings me like a little bit of deja vu back to when this whole traitor thing first got brought up. But yeah, like time and time again, it's a great gag. You know, Vegapunk's like, oh, we have to make sure that none of the Vegapunks, Lilith, gets away with this. And then I think it was Pythagoras later who says, that's right. If our memories get uploaded to Punk Records, then Lilith, I mean, the culprit might catch on to us. I just love that all of them kind of agree that Lilith is the main suspect. And here we have it, you know, cut back to present day. Lilith is the only Vegapunk that made it off of the island successfully. Of course, there's York, but, you know, she's with the bad guys, so she doesn't count. But Lilith is the one Vegapunk that, despite all the odds, managed to survive. So we come to find out in this segment, one of the main reasons why York wasn't able to realize that Stella, Shaka, and Pythagoras were hot on her heels. And that's because they activated something called stealth mode. We're not too sure how that works exactly, but I'm kind of imagining it like going incognito mode on a browser tab. You know, maybe York rings him up on the Dendenmushi or the telecommunications device, whatever they have, and it just goes to hold or mute. Maybe she tries to read their memories, and then she just so happens to get blocked off. But yeah, like they go a whole week in stealth mode until they finally realize that York herself is the culprit. Pythagoras says that the memories she has been uploading to Punk Records have been phony. And not just that, but the surveillance nails at the scene of the crime have also been tampered with. Shaka adds into it and says that the sea beasts have also been altered. Pythagoras adds on to that and ends it off by saying that he also found a white transponder Dendenmushi during the investigation. Vegapunk has the bright idea to recreate it to see what the recording was all about, and that is when they learn that York has been in contact with Marie-Joie the entire time. And by this point, even if they capture York, it would be completely pointless because everything has already been set into motion. York has already delivered the Mother Flame, York has also already spilled the beans about the Void Century, and plus, all the Cyberpol agents who came here to Agate Island have been captured and been held in the basement for quite some time now. So even if Shaka, Pythagoras, and Stella capture York and behead her or kill her, it wouldn't matter because, you know, in the very next day, the Marines are just going to show up anyways. So they want to instead lay out a plot of their own. But before we get there though, we have a couple of key things I want to talk about. The first one being the fact that we learn that York was able to transfer the Mother Flame to the world government via the Sea Beast weapons. The reason this caught my attention is because I simply can't imagine how this went down. Like, did she bottle a flame and give it to a Sea Beast and then it carried it all the way to Marie Joie? Did the Sea Beast eat it and then brought it over? Is it like a fuel source where, you know, you inject it in your body and then they ejected it later? And the reason I said that is because we know that the Seraphim use the Mother Flame as an energy source. A lot of Agate Island is fueled by the Mother Flame as well. So maybe it is just like a fuel that you can take in and let out, right? So yeah, we still don't know how that works yet. And I just thought that was really interesting. Another thing we learn is the fact that Vegapunk has Cloud Loft technology. We already knew that he had this, but he's never really talked about it in this extent. So after he learns what happened at Lelucia, he's like, hey, if the world is going to sink one day, then the Cloud Loft technology that we have here on Agate Island will be very important in the near future. And then in that panel, Oda actually cuts over to the Cloud Loft technology, and we see that all the clouds are actually coming out of that giant wine bottle that we've seen before here on Agate Island. And now I'm just wondering who's going to take this technology and bring it around the world? Who will pick up the mantle and tackle this mission firsthand? Because I honestly have no clue. But I have seen a lot of great suggestions out there, and I do want to talk about each and every one of them, and I do think this will play a pivotal role in the future if the world government keeps on using their ancient weapon to raise the water levels. So when I think about the Cloud Loft technology, my mind instantly went to two specific characters. Those characters being Judge and Caesar of Neo Mads. Because, for me at least, when I think of Vegapunk technology, I don't believe there's too many people that can recreate it and or use it. And that's simply because Vegapunk is a genius, so I gatekept it to only other geniuses. So I was like, oh, maybe, you know, Judge and Caesar, maybe they'll come over here and pick up this Cloud Loft technology and start creating clouds for all the countries in the world. But the more I thought about that, the more ridiculous it sounded, because Judge isn't that nice, and Caesar isn't that nice either, right? Unless Vegapunk called them up on the phone and said, hey, please, I'm dying, you guys need to do this for me, I can't see them doing it out of goodwill. So outside of them, another character that people have been talking about, and I do like this a lot, but people said maybe Vegapunk gave this technology to Smoker. Because Smoker has been MIA for quite some time now, right? And last we saw Smoker, he did have this weird box behind him with an X on it. So maybe that is the Cloud Loft technology, and Smoker will be the one who creates clouds and saves all the people around the world. I don't think that'd be too crazy, especially if Smoker is going to meet up with Tashigi and Sword pretty soon, right? Sword, they're made up of a bunch of great people. So if you give this technology to Sword, I could easily see them going around and doing this. And plus, when it comes to Smoker, there is one thing that we should keep in mind. It's the fact that Tashigi and Smoker are almost always together. These guys are stitched to the hip. So it was really odd seeing Tashigi at the beginning of Agate Island at Marine Base G14 without Smoker. And it kind of makes you wonder, where was Smoker? What was he doing this entire time? If you were to take into consideration how close G14 is to Agate Island, then I think there is a chance that Smoker could have visited Vegapunk and Vegapunk gave him this technology. The one downside to this thought though is, why would Vegapunk trust Smoker over everyone else? Did Vegapunk and Smoker have a relationship on the side and we just didn't see it? Maybe. Or perhaps Vegapunk just recently came to like Smoker, because we have to remember that Tashigi and Smoker just showed up to Agate Island not too long ago to get the antidotes for Mocha and the children of Punk Hazard. So maybe Vegapunk saw their act of goodwill and he was like, hey, that Smoker fellow, he's a really good guy. Maybe I should give him the cloud technology. That could be a thing. Outside of Smoker though, people have been saying Dragon is another good option, and holy hell do I like that answer. Because Dragon, as it stands right now, has the means to do this, right? He has an entire army of people. He has multiple commanders that usually act independently. He has his North Commander, East Commander, West, South, you name it. So Dragon distributing Cloud Loft technology, to me, makes a lot of sense. The main question is, how would Vegapunk give this technology to Dragon? right? Dragon hasn't exactly been near Egget Island to our knowledge, and plus Shaka, the day the Straw Hats showed up here on Egget Island, finally called Dragon and told him that they were going to die very soon. So with that conversation in mind and the timeline of it, I don't think Dragon has the Cloud Loft technology. I still like the option a lot, but there would have to be some explaining as to how it got delivered to him. Outside of Dragon, though, the other options I want to talk about would be Elbaf having it, and also the Straw Hats having it. So as far as the Straw Hats maybe having this technology, it kind of goes back to Jinbei and how... I don't want to say useless. I almost said useless by accident, but this plotline made me think about how Oda sidelined Jinbei for a good part of Egget Island, right? Jinbei was kind of in the background, he was chilling for the most part, and whenever Kizaru and the Marines showed up here on Egget Island, Jinbei was carrying boxes. You know, like Zoro's fighting Rob Lucci, all this was going down, and they're like, Jinbei, what are you up to? And he's like, well, I gotta bring these boxes to the Thousand Sunny. And of course, you know, a lot of the Straw Hats had menial jobs like that. But I was like, yo, Jinbei's a fighter though, right? Like I was like, yo, Zoro, Sanji, like Jinbei's up there, brother. So I thought that was kind of fascinating. But if Oda made it to where the boxes Jinbei was bringing onto the Sunny was in fact the Cloud Loft technology, that would make that job entirely different. You know, we would look at it and we'd be like, whoa, you know, Jinbei, he had a really important job here. Jinbei saved humanity essentially, right? So I would like that idea a lot. The main thing though with the Straw Hats having this technology would simply be, how would they give this to the rest of the world? You know, people said, oh, Frankie could use it, you know, Lilith could use it, and this would be great for them. And I agree. But we also have to think about the Straw Hats' journey. We're only going forward. After Elbaf, you know, I don't know what island is next, but we're just moving forward in the new world. What about all the islands behind us, right? Like, they're not going to get that Cloud Loft technology if we have it. So I think there has to be, like, a different option. It has to go to a group that is willing to just travel around and be very generous. You know, I can't imagine Luffy saying, hey, guys, let's go back to Wano and give them this. Or, hey, let's go back to Dressrosa and give them this, you know? Maybe we do, maybe we split up, but I just personally don't see that being in the cards right now. And now the last option this brings us to is Elbaf. Maybe Elbaf and the Giants end up with the Cloud Loft technology. And this works for a couple of reasons, you know, because one, Vegapunk does have connections with Elbaf since he's visited them before, and two, if Jinbei did indeed bring the Cloud Loft technology onto the Thousand Sunny, the next place they're going to is Elbaf, so they could easily just drop it off there, and maybe the Giants can just, I don't know, just distribute it around the world. They're like, hey, Jorl, you go over there. Hey, Thorkin, you go over there, right? Or maybe this has something to do with the Atom Tree. Maybe there's an easy way to distribute Cloud Loft technology without having to travel, and that answer exists within Elbaf. And, you know, one thing that I do gotta say that works really well with Frankie and the Straw Hats having this technology is the fact that Vegapunk's Cloud Loft is coming out of a wine bottle. We know Frankie is the cola guy, so imagine instead of a wine bottle that Vegapunk has, Frankie instead makes it a giant cola bottle. I think that'd be pretty cool, but like I said, I haven't exactly been sold on one over the other yet. But I would love to hear what you guys have to say. With this Cloud Loft technology, who do you think will distribute clouds around the world? And or do you think the Strawhats have this technology on hand with us today? All right, so the next thing we need to talk about is Vegapunk, because is this man truly dead right now? That is the million-dollar question, and it's a question that not even Vegapunk truly understands yet. I mean, hell, Marcus Mars of the Gorosei doesn't even know if Vegapunk is alive or not, right? Because he walked into Punk Records, saw the giant brain, and was kind of like, wait, what the hell is this, Vegapunk, you know? Like, when is a man truly dead? Like, that right there is a really good question, right? And it goes back to what I was talking about when we saw Vegapunk's dead body on the Elbaf ship. I do feel like he could at any moment just jump back up and say, hey guys, I'm alive again, you know, I connected to Punk Records and I'm here. And or like maybe Lilith will just revive him by using artificial organs. Like, there's so many things with Vegapunk that are up in the air, and we don't know how he works yet. I mean, not even he really understands what death truly is for a being like himself. So the next thing I want to talk about is once again the Mother Flame. I know, it's like a reoccurring nightmare, guys. Vegapunk brings up the notion that the Mother Flame is still not perfected. but one day he hopes that he could use it to power up the ancient robot. But also deep down, he hopes that it's never perfected because York would use it for evil. But yeah, now that we know that Luffy's flame is what they were looking for the entire time, or at least Luffy's heartbeat was, I wonder how York and or Lilith are going to expand upon that in the future. Now that York and Lilith have witnessed firsthand that Luffy's flame is the correct flame, will they be able to recreate it? I don't think Lilith will be able to, considering she no longer has Egghead Island or the world government funding her. I do wonder if York can. You know, York is the, quote, mastermind of all of this. York has sold herself to the world government as this genius that can always bring them the mother flame. But now the ball's in her court. Now that all of the other Vegapunks are pretty much dead, or at least all of them except for Lilith. I hate saying that, right? Oh, by the way, all of them except for Lilith. But yeah. Now that York is in sole possession of the Mother Flame, will she be able to upgrade it the way Vegapunk would be able to? Or no, is she not the smartest Vegapunk out there? Because I mean, hey, Shaka, Pythagoras, and Stella were able to pick up the fact that she was a traitor. So maybe she's not as smart as she seems. You know, I still think she's like smarter than 95% of the characters in the verse, but compared to the other satellites, I wonder where she ranks. I wonder if there'll ever be like a brain chart for the characters of One Piece and we could see who ranks number 1 and number 2 and number 3. Oda actually did that in the past when we were in the East Blue Saga, and if I recall correctly, he actually said that Captain Kuro was the smartest character in the East Blue, followed by Ben Beckman and then Nami. Let me double check that real quick. All right, so I found it right here. It actually says that Ben Beckman is number 1, followed by Captain Kuro and then Nami. See, this is the type of question we need, but for the Vegapunks. All right, so now on to the final parts of Vegapunk's flashback. We see that he, Shaka, and Pythagoras indeed wiped their memories clean so that York won't know what hit her. And I'm not gonna lie, but I really like how Oda did this next part, because these guys get out of their chairs, they're super confused, they have no idea what the hell's going on, and the first thing they see is a letter that they have wrote to themselves, and it says, hey, you wiped your memories clean of your own volition. The world government knows you're researching the Void Century, but don't worry, guys. You from the past, have taken all the precautions already. Just go about your day, and when the time comes, just have faith in yourself and die. And then obviously they're all super shocked. You know, their eyes are like almost popping out of their heads. They're like, wait, the government knows? What do you mean? I'm telling myself to kill myself? What's happening here, right? And then we get like the montage of everything that's happening here on Egghead. You know, Stella, Emperor Strawhats crew and Bonnie just came here. What? Cyberpole is approaching, huh? There's also a Navy admiral coming to this island, huh? And also, that person just happens to be Kizaru, and Saint Saturn is with him. Yeah, dude, this is a lot of information to take in all at once, and I thought it was really comical how Oda did Vegapunk's flashback, and I actually really enjoyed it. You know, as a spoiler guy myself, I read the brief spoilers, I read the full summary, and the one thing I had with me, you know, I like the chapter overall. I do like it when they peel back the curtains and we see what happens behind the scenes. But at the same time, I'm like, dude, no way we stick with Vegapunk for this entire chapter. No way it's just one big flashback explaining everything, right? On paper, I was pretty 50-50 on it. But after reading the chapter, I actually ended up really, really enjoying this flashback. It was not a waste of time whatsoever, in my opinion. One thing about Vegapunk's memory wipe that really has me rubbing my chin is the correlation to the title of the chapter, The Void Fortnight. Oda has, correct me if I'm wrong again, but I don't believe Oda has ever used the word void in any chapter titles. So the fact that he put it in here makes me wonder if this is how the Void Century went down and why people don't remember what happened 900 years ago. The prevailing theory before this chapter is that maybe somebody had Pudding's devil fruit in the past and they simply awakened it and snipped out the memories of those 100 years. But now that we know that Vegapunk was able to do this, maybe this is how it went down. Maybe 900 years ago, everyone simply hooked up to this machine and had their memories wiped willingly or unwillingly. Now, this brings us to the last part of the flashback where Vegapunk looks at Sanji and he's like, hey, Sanji, guys, I'm gonna die. Like, I'm gonna tell you right here, when we get down there, I'm not coming back up. You know, if the chance comes, just leave me behind. And this right here perfectly explains why Sanji seemingly let Vegapunk die. I was never on that mindset like, oh, you know, Sanji fumbled, right? But, you know, then again, Kizaru kind of came in, speed blitzed him, and then shot Vegapunk right away. Like, he didn't really have a chance. But I can also see that Sanji was okay if Vegapunk got hit, because Vegapunk knew that his death would set something in motion. He didn't know what at the time, because his memories were wiped, but he wanted to die. He wanted to get hit at the end of the day. One thing that could have made it better is if he created some sort of anesthetic to where he doesn't hurt. Because, you know, I'm just thinking back to all the times where Vegapunk got hit. He got stabbed by Saturn, you know, he pierced his body, and then Kizaru shot him twice. And in both of those scenes, Vegapunk was screaming at the top of his lungs. So I'm kind of like, yo, Vegapunk, maybe you should have invented something to where you don't feel pain, because that looked awful, man. You know, whenever you die or you want to die, you'd hope that whatever kills you doesn't pretty fast, but Vegapunk kind of had to suffer, but that's fine, that's fine. But as far as Sanji goes though, what I really love is that a lot of people, man, people are quick with this, but a lot of people pointed out that when Bonnie asked Sanji to bring back Vegapunk, Sanji smiled and he's like, yep, I'll do just that. And they're like, yo, Sanji knew that Vegapunk wasn't going to come back. Sanji had to lie to Bonnie, and this threw them back to when Sanji said he would be right back at Zou. And then we knew that, you know, when he was going to Whole Cake Island, he had no intentions of coming back. So Sanji has like this tell almost, right? Oda gave Sanji a tell. So whenever you see Sanji use this smile in the future, just know he's BSing. Just know that deep down, Sanji is going to do the exact opposite. But yeah, I thought that was awesome. It adds another layer of depth to Sanji, to Vegapunk. And one of my main complaints about Vegapunk's death is the fact that it felt very unceremonious. I've tossed that word around a lot, but you know, when Vegapunk got shot, it was like, oh, is that it? You know, like when the heartbeat monitor like flatlined, a lot of people during that chapter were like, wait, he's not dead, is he? Did Sanji really just let him die? And this chapter, I feel like it recontextualizes the whole thing in a really good way, and it makes Vegapunk's death, if you want to call it that, seem much more impactful and much more well thought out. And a problem with a character like Vegapunk in not just One Piece, but any series, you know, having the world's smartest man is always a hard character to write, because no matter what happens, people are always going to say, why didn't he do this? Or why didn't he do that? And that is something I kind of thought of with Vegapunk, but I just turned my brain off because, you know, it's no big deal, right? I'm just reading the story. But I'm glad that Oda went back and he's like, hey, Vegapunk actually knew all of this. Vegapunk actually had this all planned out. You know, Vegapunk was actually 2 steps ahead the entire time. And now I'm just like, yo, this is pretty fire. Vegapunk, your death wasn't so bad after all. So now this brings us to the final page, or the final panel of the chapter, and we actually not only get the Giants and Luffy and Usopp, but we also get Vegapunk's final words to Sanji. And this guy, he says, yo, about the One Piece, by the way, I want you guys to be the ones who find it. And I don't know, I'm stupid. But I do get those little goosebumps every time somebody says, hey, Luffy's gonna be Pirate King, or, oh, you know, Luffy's gonna find the One Piece. And it was the same thing here. You know, every time I read this, I'm like, yo, Vegapunk placed his bets on the Straw Hats. He could have done this for anybody, right? He could have easily looked at other pirate groups and said, oh, you know, red-haired Shanks, yeah, that fellow, I put my bets on him. No, dude. He put that on the Straw Hats. And it kind of makes me wonder why. You know, I don't want to like question his intentions too much here, but I'm like, okay, is it because he really likes the Straw Hats, right? He spent a good old 24, 48 hours with them, and he's like, hey, if there's a kind-hearted group of pirates to find it, it's going to be the Straw Hats. Or is it because of history, right? Is it because Luffy has the will of D? Or is it because Luffy is the sun god? He's the warrior of liberation. And of course, none of these are mutually exclusive as well, so it could just be all of these options combined. But yeah, I mean, Vegapunk, he's made many predictions, many guesses in the past, and they've all been correct. So Luffy in the group finding the One Piece, I'm gonna say it right here. Here's my hot take. But I think the Straw Hats are going to find the One Piece at the end of the day. So now, that brings us to the final image we have this chapter. We see Usopp hoisted up to the heavens by Dory. And Luffy's also being hoisted up, but he's shriveled up, and he's also being crushed at the same time, so it's kind of funny. But yes, Usopp! Woohoo! He's going to the land of his dreams, and I'm pretty excited, man. You know, people are saying that we shouldn't get our hopes up too high for Usopp because Oda might just disappoint us. But I don't think so. For Usopp, this is the land of his dreams. This is where he's wanted to go from the very beginning, right? So I don't think that Oda will disappoint Usopp fans in this upcoming arc, and I do have a lot of faith in him. And as far as this final panel goes, I see it as reassurance that Usopp will get a spotlight here. Usopp is being held higher than Luffy in that final panel, right? Like, dude, it's Usopp's time to shine, and I'm very excited for it. As a former Usopp fan, I do wish him the best. You know, I liked Usopp in the East Blue Saga pre-time skip, but I eventually lost that love towards him. So I hope that when we hit Elbaf, he does get a lot of character growth, he gets stronger, or just even becomes a brave warrior, or whatever he believes to be a brave warrior is. I'm really excited for Elbaf, but we can't get too excited because we have to remember, and this is usually my favorite part of every arc, but the transition between arc to arc or island to island always involves outside influences. I think there's a better way to word it, but you know what I mean. We don't simply leave Wano and then show up at Egghead, right? No, there was a lot in between that. We got Cross Guild, we got the Revs, we got Red-Haired Shanks, Sphinx Village, Weevil, Boa Hancock. We met a lot of characters in between those islands, and I'm expecting the same thing is going to happen for Elbaf. From Egghead to Elbaf, I believe Oda will stop and take us around the world, you know, show us what the Revs are doing, show us what Sword, Cross Guild, Neo-Mads, Red-Haired Shanks, Kid, and Lot, show me all of these guys, Oda. I'm excited. You know, as we progress through this final saga, everything's being amped up, visions are getting narrowed, and I think this is beautiful, right? Like, I want to see how everybody's reacting in the wake of Vegapunk's message. Because there's a lot of people we're still undecided about, right? A lot of people are still debating on who's going to go for what. Are they going to go for ancient weapons? Are they going to go for poneglyphs? Are they simply going to overthrow the world government? Just so many questions are up in the air, and I feel like in the next couple of chapters, we will start getting some of these answers. Personally, one group I just can't wait to spend time with, and I hope we see during this segment, would hands down have to be the Holy Knights. You know, the Celestial Dragons, they are seemingly the final villains of the entire series, so I want to see what these guys are all about. You know, show me the Figarland family, show me the mystery silhouette, you know, or even just hint at what powers they have. And what's crazy, too, is that they were supposed to make a move post-Reverie, right? Because the revolutionaries came to Marie-Joie, they destroyed their food supply, and now they're being forced to go out and get food for the Celestial Dragons. So what does that look like? Who are they raiding? What are they stealing? I feel like the time is ripe to see the Celestial Dragons in action. Outside of that, though, who would you guys like to see during this segment? Is it the Revs? Or perhaps do you want to see what's going on with Red Hair and Blackbeard, right? Like, there's no bad option when it comes to, I don't even know what to call it, right? Traversal piece, you know? I don't think there's a bad option at all, and I'm just excited. I'm just excited. The last thing I do want to bring up, and I haven't really given this much thought, honestly, but we might be getting new bounties for the crew. Especially now that the crew have essentially defeated a Buster Call, an Admiral, and the Gorosei. I think this would definitely encourage the world government to up the ante on a lot of the Straw Hats. I mean, come on, dude. Like, Wano is one thing, right? Taking down Kaido, Big Mom. You know, he had the whole Hokage Island shenanigans, and that bumped him up to 1.5. Like, I get it. Those make sense, right? But this time around, the Straw Hats have actively defeated the Navy. Kizaru's down. I mean, well, he's heartbroken, but he's down. The VAs are all down. 30,000 Marines are down. Wait, was it 30,000? Yeah, 30,000 Marines are down. The Gorosei are down. Like, oh my God. Oh my God. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if we get new bounties, but the only reason I'm kind of holding back on that and haven't given it much thought is because it does feel like we just got their new bounties so recently. Maybe it's because, you know, we talk about One Piece every week here on the channel, but it feels like just yesterday when we got, you know, Luffy at 3 billion and Zoro at 1.11. So getting new bounties 2 years afterwards, like that might be the fastest bounty jump we've had. But yeah, I would love to ask you guys, what do you think the bounties are going to be? Personally, I think Luffy could easily jump up to 3.56. I don't think he's going to surpass Shanks, so I don't think he's going to go above 4 billion, because Shanks is 4.096. So I think Luffy would be well seated at 3.56 or, around that range. As far as Zoro goes, I could easily see him getting 1.5. Sanji, I could see Sanji getting like 1.4, 1.3. Jinbei getting up to 1.2. I know, like, oh, Sanji over Jinbei, you're crazy. But you gotta remember, Sanji did a lot here. Sanji was there with Saturn, though, and he did kick off one of the legs. So I bet Saturn probably took note of him. And then plus, there was the whole Frankie thing, too. And we know Frankie's bounty poster is messed up currently. So maybe Saturn will fix that, right? I wonder how that went down. When Saturn saw Frankie, I wonder if he had the same reaction as the Giants, where the Giants were like, hey, who's this guy? I didn't see this guy on the wanted posters. I wonder if Saturn had the same reaction and if he'll fix Frankie's bounty poster because of that. But yeah, overall though, great chapter. I would love to hear what you guys have to say about this all down below. And I will catch you guys on the very next day when we do the park collab. And then, of course, we will be reading through the comment section and just having a good old discussion again. But yeah, I'll catch you guys later. My name is Sai, and I'm signing out. Peace.